At Burdwan, we came face to face with the hardships that a third-class passenger has to go through, even in securing his ticket. Third-class tickets are not booked so early, we were told. I went to the station master, though that too was our difficult business. Someone kindly directed me to where he was, and I represented to him our difficulty. He also made the same reply. As soon as the booking window opened, I went to purchase the tickets. But it was no easy thing to get them. Might was right, and passengers who were forward and indifferent to others, coming one after another, continued to push me out. I was therefore about the last of the first crowd to get a ticket. The train arrived, and getting into it was another trial. There was a free exchange of abuse and pushes between passengers already in the train and those trying to get in. We ran up and down the platform, but were everywhere met with the same reply, "No room here." I went to the guard. He said, "You must try to get in where you can or take the next train." "But I have urgent business," I respectfully replied. He had no time to listen to me. I was disconcerted. I told Maganlal to get in wherever possible, and I got into an interclass compartment with my wife. The guard saw us getting in. At Asansol station, he came to charge us excess fares. I said to him, "It was your duty to find us room. We could not get any, and so we are sitting here. If you can accommodate us in a third-class compartment, we shall be only too glad to go there." "You may not argue with me," said the guard. "I cannot accommodate you. You must pay the excess fare or get out." I wanted to reach Pune somehow. I was not therefore prepared to fight the guard, so I paid the excess fare he demanded, that is, up to Pune, but I resented the injustice. In the morning we reached Mughal Sarai. Maganlal had now managed to get a seat in the third class, to which I now shifted. I acquainted the ticket examiner with all the facts and asked him to give me a certificate to the effect that I had shifted to a third-class compartment at Mughal Sarai. This he declined to do. I applied to the railway authorities for redress and got a reply to this effect. It is not our practice to refund excess fares without the production of a certificate, but we make an exception in your case. It is not possible, however, to refund the excess fare from Burdwan to Mughal Sarai. Since this, I have had experiences of third-class travelling, which, if I wrote them all down, would easily fill a volume. But I can only touch on them casually in these chapters. It has been, and always will be, my profound regret that physical incapacity should have compelled me to give up third-class travelling. The woes of third-class passengers are undoubtedly due to the high-handedness of railway authorities. But the rudeness, dirty habits, selfishness and ignorance of the passengers themselves are no less to blame. The pity is that they often do not realize that they are behaving ill, dirtily or selfishly. They believe that everything they do is in the natural way. All this may be traced to the indifference towards them of us educated people. We reached Kalyan dead tired. Maganlal and I got some water from the station water pipe and had our bath. As I was proceeding to arrange for my wife's bath, Sergeant Kaul of the Servants of India Society, recognizing us, came up. He too was going to Pune. He offered to take my wife to the second-class bathroom. I hesitated to accept the courteous offer. I knew that my wife had no right to avail herself of the second-class bathroom, but I ultimately connived at the impropriety. This, I know, does not become a votary of truth. Not that my wife was eager to use the bathroom, but a husband's partiality for his wife got the better of his partiality for truth. The face of truth is hidden behind the golden veil of Maya, says the Upanishad. On arrival in Pune, we found ourselves, after the performance of the Shraddha ceremonies, discussing the future of the society and the question as to whether I should join it or not. This question of membership proved a very delicate matter for me to handle. Whilst Gokhale was there, I did not have to seek admission as a member. I had simply to obey his wish, a position I loved to be in. Launching on the stormy sea of Indian public life, I was in need of a sure pilot. I had had one in Gokhale and had felt secure in his keeping. Now that he was gone, I was thrown on my own resources, and I felt that it was my duty to seek admission. That, I thought, would please Gokhale's spirit. So, without hesitation and with firmness, I began the wooing. Most of the members of the society were in Pune at this juncture. I set about pleading with them and tried to dispel their fears about me. But I saw that they were divided. One section favored my admission, the other was strongly against it. I knew that neither yielded to the other in its affection for me, but possibly their loyalty to the society was greater, at any rate not less than their love for me. All our discussions were therefore free from bitterness and strictly confined to matters of principle. The section that was opposed to me held that they and I were at the poles asunder in various vital matters, and they felt that my membership was likely to imperil the very objects for which the society was founded. This naturally was more than they could bear. We dispersed after prolonged discussions, the final decision being postponed to a later date. I was considerably agitated as I returned home. Was it right for me to be admitted by a majority vote? Would it be consonant with my loyalty to Gokhale? I saw clearly that, when there was such a sharp division amongst the members of the society over admitting me, by far the best course for me was to withdraw my application for admission and save those opposed to me from a delicate situation. Therein, I thought, lay my loyalty to the society and Gokhale. The decision came to me in a flash, and immediately I wrote to Mr. Shastri asking him not to have the adjourned meeting at all. Those who had opposed my application fully appreciated the decision. It saved them from an awkward position and bound us in closer bonds of friendship. The withdrawal of my application made me truly a member of the society. Experience now tells me that it was well that I did not formally become a member, and that the opposition of those who had been against me was justified. Experience has shown too that our views on matters of principle were widely divergent. But the recognition of the differences has meant no estrangement or bitterness between us. We have remained as brothers, and the society's Pune home has always been for me a place of pilgrimage. It is true that I did not officially become a member of the society, but I have ever been a member in spirit. Spiritual relationship is far more precious than physical. Physical relationship divorced from spiritual is body without soul. I next went to Rangoon to meet Dr. Mehta, and on my way I halted at Calcutta. I was the guest of the late Babu Bhupendranath Basu. Bengali hospitality reached its climax here. In those days I was a strict fruitarian, so all the fruits and nuts available in Calcutta were ordered for me. The ladies of the house kept awake all night skinning various nuts. Every possible care was taken in dressing fresh fruit in the Indian style. Numerous delicacies were prepared for my companions, amongst whom was my son Ram Das. Much as I could appreciate this affectionate hospitality, I could not bear the thought of a whole household being occupied in entertaining 2 or 3 guests. But as yet I saw no escape from such embarrassing attentions. On the boat going to Rangoon, I was a deck passenger. If excess of attention embarrassed us in Sergeant Basu's house, grossest inattention even to the elementary comforts of deck passengers was our lot on the boat. What was an apology for a bathroom was unbearably dirty. The latrines were stinking sinks. To use the latrine, one had to wade through urine and excreta or jump over them. This was more than flesh and blood could bear. I approached the chief officer without avail. If anything was lacking to complete the picture of stink and filth, the passengers furnished it by their thoughtless habits. They spat where they sat, dirtied the surroundings with the leavings of their food, tobacco, and betel leaves. There was no end to the noise, and everyone tried to monopolize as much room as possible. Their luggage took up more room than they. We had thus 2 days of the severest trial. On reaching Rangoon, I wrote to the agent of the steamship company, acquainting him with all the facts. Thanks to this letter and to Dr. Mehta's efforts in the matter, the return journey, though on deck, was less unbearable. In Rangoon, my fruitarian diet was again a source of additional trouble to the host. But since Dr. Mehta's home was as good as my own, I could control somewhat the lavishness of the menu. However, as I had not set any limit to the number of articles I might eat, the palate and the eyes refused to put an effective check on the supply of varieties ordered. There were no regular hours for meals. Personally, I preferred having the last meal before nightfall. Nevertheless, as a rule, it could not be had before 8 or 9. This year, 1915, was the year of the Kumbha fair, which is held at Hardwar once every 12 years. I was by no means eager to attend the fair, but I was anxious to meet Mahatma Munshi Ramji, who was in his Gurukul. Gokhale's society had sent a big volunteer corps for service at the Kumbha. Pandit Hridayanath Kunzru was at the head, and the late Dr. Dev was the medical officer. I was invited to send the Phoenix party to assist them, and so Maganlal Gandhi had already preceded me. On my return from Rangoon, I joined the band. The journey from Calcutta to Hardwar was particularly trying. Sometimes the compartments had no lights. From Saharanpur, we were huddled into carriages for goods or cattle. These had no roofs, and what with the blazing midday sun overhead and the scorching iron floor beneath, we were all but roasted. The pangs of thirst caused by even such a journey as this could not persuade Orthodox Hindus to take water if it was Musalmani. They waited until they could get a Hindu water. These very Hindus, let it be noted, do not so much as hesitate or inquire when during illness the doctor administers them wine or prescribes beef tea, or a Musalman or Christian compounder gives them water. Our stay in Shantiniketan had taught us that the scavenger's work would be our special function in India. Now for the volunteers in Hardwar, tents had been pitched in a dharmashala, and Dr. Dev had dug some pits to be used as latrines. He had had to depend on paid scavengers for looking after these. Here was work for the Phoenix party. We offered to cover up the excreta with earth and to see to their disposal, and Dr. Dev gladly accepted our offer. The offer was naturally made by me, but it was Maganlal Gandhi who had to execute it. My business was mostly to keep sitting in the tent, giving darshan and holding religious and other discussions with numerous pilgrims who called on me. This left me not a minute which I could call my own. I was followed even to the bathing ghat by these darshan seekers, nor did they leave me alone whilst I was having my meals. Thus it was in Hardwar that I realized what a deep impression my humble services in South Africa had made throughout the whole of India. But this was no enviable position to be in. I felt as though I was between the devil and the deep sea. Where no one recognized me, I had to put up with the hardships that fall to the lot of the millions in this land, for example, in railway traveling. Where I was surrounded by the people who had heard of me, I was the victim of their craze for darshan. Which of these two conditions was more pitiable, I have often been at a loss to determine. This at least I know, that the darshanwala's blind love has often made me angry and more often sore at heart. Whereas travelling, though often trying, has been uplifting and has hardly ever roused me to anger. I was in those days strong enough to roam about a lot and was fortunately not so known as not to be able to go in the streets without creating much fuss. During these roamings I came to observe more of the pilgrims' absent-mindedness, hypocrisy and slovenliness than of their piety. The swarm of sadhus who had descended there seemed to have been born but to enjoy the good things of life. Here I saw a cow with 5 feet. I was astonished, but knowing men soon disillusioned me. The poor 5-footed cow was a sacrifice to the greed of the wicked. I learned that the 5th foot was nothing else but a foot cut off from a live calf and grafted upon the shoulder of the cow. The result of this double cruelty was exploited to fleece the ignorant of their money. There was no Hindu but would be attracted by a 5-footed cow, and no Hindu but would lavish his charity on such a miraculous cow. The day of the fair was now upon us. It proved a red-letter day for me. I had not gone to Hardwar with the sentiments of a pilgrim. I have never thought of frequenting places of pilgrimage in search of piety. But the 17 lakhs of men that were reported to be there could not all be hypocrites or mere sightseers. I had no doubt that countless people amongst them had gone there to earn merit and for self-purification. It is difficult, if not impossible, to say to what extent this kind of faith uplifts the soul. I therefore passed the whole night immersed in deep thought. There were those pious souls in the midst of the hypocrisy that surrounded them. They would be free of guilt before their Maker. If the visit to Hardwar was in itself a sin, I must publicly protest against it and leave Hardwar on the day of the Kumbha. If the pilgrimage to Hardwar and to the Kumbha fair was not sinful, I must impose some act of self-denial on myself in atonement for the iniquity prevailing there and purify myself. This was quite natural for me. My life is based on disciplinary resolutions. I thought of the unnecessary trouble I had caused to my hosts at Calcutta and Rangoon, who had so lavishly entertained me. I therefore decided to limit the articles of my daily diet and to have my final meal before sunset. I was convinced that if I did not impose these restrictions on myself, I should put my future hosts to considerable inconvenience and should engage them in serving me rather than engage myself in service. So I pledged myself never whilst in India to take more than 5 articles in 24 hours and never to eat after dark. I gave the fullest thought to the difficulties I might have to face, but I wanted to leave no loophole. I rehearsed to myself what would happen during an illness if I counted medicine among the 5 articles and made no exception in favor of special articles of diet. I finally decided that there should be no exception on any account whatsoever. I have been under these vows for now 13 years. They have subjected me to a severe test, but I am able to testify that they have also served as my shield. I am of opinion that they have added a few years to my life and saved me from many an illness. It was a positive relief to reach the Gurukul and meet Mahatma Munshi Ramji with his giant frame. I at once felt the wonderful contrast between the peace of the Gurukul and the din and noise of Haridwar. The Mahatma overwhelmed me with affection. The Brahmacharis were all attention. It was here that I was first introduced to Acharya Ramadev Ji, and I could immediately see what a force and a power he must be. We had different viewpoints in several matters. Nevertheless, our acquaintance soon ripened into friendship. I had long discussions with Acharya Ramadev Ji and other professors about the necessity of introducing industrial training into the Gurukul. When the time came for going away, it was a wrench to leave the place. I had heard much in praise of the Lakshman Jhula, a hanging bridge over the Ganges, some distance from Hrishikesh, and many friends pressed me not to leave Haridwar without having gone as far as the bridge. I wanted to do this pilgrimage on foot, and so I did it in 2 stages. Many sannyasis called on me at Hrishikesh. One of them was particularly attracted towards me. The Phoenix party was there, and their presence drew from the Swami many questions. We had discussions about religion, and he realized that I felt deeply about matters of religion. He saw me bareheaded and shirtless as I had returned from my bath into the Ganges. He was pained to miss the shikha, tuft of hair on my head, and the sacred thread about my neck, and said, "It pains me to see you, a believing Hindu, going without a sacred thread and a shikha. These are the 2 external symbols of Hinduism, and every Hindu ought to wear them." Now there is a history as to how I came to dispense with both. When I was an urchin of 10, I envied the Brahman lads sporting bunches of keys tied to their sacred threads, and I wished I could do likewise. The practice of wearing the sacred thread was not then common among the Vaishya families in Kathiawad. But a movement has just been started for making it obligatory for the first 3 varnas. As a result, several members of the Gandhi clan adopted the sacred thread. The Brahman who was teaching 2 or 3 of us boys Ram Raksha invested us with the thread, and although I had no occasion to possess a bunch of keys, I got one and began to sport it. Later, when the thread gave way, I do not remember whether I missed it very much, but I know that I did not go in for a fresh one. As I grew up, several well-meaning attempts were made, both in India and South Africa, to reinvest me with the sacred thread, but with little success. If the Shudras may not wear it, I argued, what right have the other Varnas to do so? And I saw no adequate reason for adopting what was to me an unnecessary custom. I had no objection to the thread as such, but the reasons for wearing it were lacking. As a Vaishnava, I had naturally worn round my neck the kanthi, and the shikha was considered obligatory by elders. On the eve of my going to England, however, I got rid of the shikha, lest when I was bareheaded it should expose me to ridicule and make me look, as I then thought, a barbarian in the eyes of Englishmen. In fact, this cowardly feeling carried me so far that in South Africa I got my cousin Chhaganlal Gandhi, who was religiously wearing the shikha, to do away with it. I feared that it might come in the way of his public work, and so, Even at the risk of paining him, I made him get rid of it. I therefore made a clean breast of the whole matter to the Swami and said, I will not wear the sacred thread, for I see no necessity for it, when countless Hindus can go without it and yet remain Hindus. Moreover, the sacred thread should be a symbol of a spiritual regeneration, presupposing a deliberate attempt on the part of the wearer at a higher and purer life. I doubt whether in the present state of Hinduism and of India, Hindus can vindicate the right to wear a symbol charged with such a meaning. That right can come only after Hinduism has purged itself of untouchability, has removed all distinctions of superiority and inferiority, and shed a host of other evils and shams that have become rampant in it. My mind, therefore, rebels against the idea of wearing the sacred thread. But I am sure your suggestion about the shikha is worth considering. I once used to have it, and I discarded it from a false sense of shame, and so I feel that I should start growing it again. I shall discuss the matter with my comrades. The Swami did not appreciate my position with regard to the sacred thread. The very reasons that seemed to me point to not wearing it appeared to him to favor its wearing. Even today my position remains about the same as it was at Hrishikesh. So long as there are different religions, every one of them may need some outward distinctive symbol. But when the symbol is made into a fetish and an instrument of proving the superiority of one's religion over others, it is fit only to be discarded. The sacred thread does not appear to me today to be a means of uplifting Hinduism. I am therefore indifferent to it. As for the shikha, cowardice having been the reason for discarding it, after consultation with friends I decided to regrow it. But to return to Lakshman Jhula. I was charmed with the natural scenery about Hrishikesh and the Lakshman Jhula, and bowed my head in reverence to our ancestors for their sense of the beautiful in nature and for their foresight in investing beautiful manifestations of nature with a religious significance. But the way in which men were using these beauty spots was far from giving me peace. As at Hardwar, so at Hrishikesh, people dirtied the roads and the fair banks of the Ganges. They did not even hesitate to desecrate the sacred water of the Ganges. It filled me with agony to see people performing natural functions on the thoroughfares and river banks when they could easily have gone a little farther away from public haunts. Lakshman Jhula was, I saw, nothing but an iron suspension bridge over the Ganges. I was told that originally there had been a fine rope bridge. But a philanthropic Marwadi got it into his head to destroy the rope bridge and erect an iron one at a heavy cost, and then entrusted the keys to the government. I am at a loss to say anything about the rope bridge, as I have never seen it. But the iron bridge is entirely out of place in such surroundings and mars their beauty. The making over of the keys of this pilgrim's bridge to government was too much even for my loyalty of those days. The Ashram, which one reaches after crossing the bridge, was a wretched place, being nothing but a number of shabby-looking sheds of galvanized iron sheets. These, I was told, were made for sadhakas, aspirants. There were hardly any living there at the moment. Those who were in the main building gave one an unfavorable impression. But the Hardwar experiences proved for me to be of inestimable value. They helped me in no small way to decide where I was to live and what I was to do. The pilgrimage to the Kumbha fair was my second visit to Hardwar. The Satyagraha Ashram was founded on the 25th of May 1915. Shraddhanandaji wanted me to settle in Hardwar. Some of my Calcutta friends recommended Vaidyanatha Dham. Others strongly urged me to choose Rajkot. But when I happened to pass through Ahmedabad, many friends pressed me to settle down there, and they volunteered to fund the expenses of the ashram as well as a house for us to live in. I had a predilection for Ahmedabad. Being a Gujarati, I thought I should be able to render the greatest service to the country through the Gujarati language. And then, as Ahmedabad was an ancient center of handloom weaving, it was likely to be the most favorable field for the revival of the cottage industry of hand spinning. There was also the hope that, the city being the capital of Gujarat, monetary help from its wealthy citizens would be more available here than elsewhere. The question of untouchability was naturally among the subjects discussed with the Ahmedabad friends. I made it clear to them that I should take the first opportunity of admitting an untouchable candidate to the ashram if he was otherwise worthy. "Where is the untouchable who will satisfy your condition?" said a Vaishnava friend self-complacently. I finally decided to found the ashram at Ahmedabad. So far as accommodation was concerned, Sergeant Jeevanlal Desai, a barrister in Ahmedabad, was the principal man to help me. He offered to let, and we decided to hire, his Kochrab bungalow. The first thing we had to settle was the name of the ashram. I consulted friends. Amongst the names suggested were Sevashram, the abode of service, Tapovan, the abode of austerities, etc. I liked the name Sevashram, but for the absence of emphasis on the method of service. Tapovan seemed to be a pretentious title because, though tapas was dear to us, we could not presume to be tapasvins, men of austerity. Our creed was devotion to truth, and our business was the search for and insistence on truth. I wanted to acquaint India with the method I had tried in South Africa, and I desired to test in India the extent to which its application might be possible. So my companions and I selected the name Satyagraha Ashram as conveying both our goal and our method of service. For the conduct of the ashram, a code of rules and observances was necessary. A draft was therefore prepared, and friends were invited to express their opinions on it. Amongst the many opinions that were received, that of Sir Gurudas Banerjee is still in my memory. He liked the rules, but suggested that humility should be added as one of the observances, as he believed that the younger generation sadly lacked humility. Though I noticed this fault, I feared humility would cease to be humility the moment it became a matter of vow. The true connotation of humility is self-effacement. Self-effacement is moksha, salvation, and whilst it cannot by itself be an observance, there may be other observances necessary for its attainment. If the acts of an aspirant after moksha or a servant have no humility or selflessness about them, there is no longing for moksha or service. Service without humility is selfishness and egotism. There were at this time about 13 Tamilians in our party. 5 Tamil youngsters had accompanied me from South Africa, and the rest came from different parts of the country. We were, in all, about 25 men and women. This is how the ashram was started. All had their meals in a common kitchen and strove to live as one family. The ashram had been in existence only a few months when we were put to a test such as I had scarcely expected. I received a letter from Amritlal Thakkar to this effect. A humble and honest, untouchable family is desirous of joining your ashram. Will you accept them? I was perturbed. I had never expected that an untouchable family, with an introduction from no less a man than Thakkar Bapa, would so soon be seeking admission to the ashram. I shared the letter with my companions. They welcomed it. I wrote to Amritlal Thakkar expressing our willingness to accept the family, provided all the members were ready to abide by the rules of the ashram. The family consisted of Dudabhai, his wife Dani Ben, and their daughter Lakshmi, then a mere toddling babe. Dudabhai had been a teacher in Bombay. They all agreed to abide by the rules and were accepted. But their admission created a flutter amongst the friends who had been helping the ashram. The very first difficulty was found with regard to the use of the well, which was partly controlled by the owner of the bungalow. The man in charge of the water lift objected that drops of water from our bucket would pollute him. So he took to swearing at us and molesting Dudabhai. I told everyone to put up with the abuse and continue drawing water at any cost. When he saw that we did not return his abuse, the man became ashamed and ceased to bother us. All monetary help, however, was stopped. The friend who had asked that question about an untouchable being able to follow the rules of the ashram had never expected that any such would be forthcoming. With the stopping of monetary help came rumors of a proposed social boycott. We were prepared for all this. I had told my companions that if we were boycotted and denied the usual facilities, we would not leave Ahmedabad. We could rather go and stay in the untouchables' quarter and live on whatever we could get by manual labor. Matters came to such a pass that Maganlal Gandhi one day gave me this notice: "We are out of funds and there is nothing for the next month." I quietly replied, "Then we shall go to the untouchables' quarter." This was not the first time I had been faced with such a trial. On all such occasions, God has sent help at the last moment. One morning, shortly after Maganlal had given me warning of our monetary plight, one of the children came and said that a Sheth who was waiting in a car outside wanted to see me. I went out to him. "I want to give the ashram some help. Will you accept it?" he asked. "Most certainly," said I, "and I confess I am at the present moment at the end of my resources." "I shall come tomorrow at this time," he said. "Will you be here?" "Yes," said I, and he left. Next day, exactly at the appointed hour, the car drew up near our quarters and the horn was blown. The children came with the news. The Sheth did not come in. I went out to see him. He placed in my hands currency notes of the value of rupees 13,000 and drove away. I had never expected this help, and what a novel way of rendering it. The gentleman had never before visited the ashram. So far as I can remember, I had met him only once. No visit, no enquiries, simply rendering help and going away. This was a unique experience for me. The help deferred the exodus to the untouchables' quarter. We now felt quite safe for a year. Just as there was a storm outside, so was there a storm in the ashram itself. Though in South Africa untouchable friends used to come to my place and live and feed with me, my wife and other women did not seem quite to relish the admission into the ashram of the untouchable friends. My eyes and ears easily detected their indifference, if not their dislike, towards Dani Ben. The monetary difficulty had caused me no anxiety, but this internal storm was more than I could bear. Dani Ben was an ordinary woman. Dudabhai was a man with a slight education but of good understanding. I liked his patience. Sometimes he did flare up but on the whole I was well impressed with his forbearance. I pleaded with him to swallow minor insults. He not only agreed but prevailed upon his wife to do likewise. The admission of this family proved a valuable lesson to the ashram. In the very beginning, we proclaimed to the world that the ashram would not countenance untouchability. Those who wanted to help the ashram were thus put on their guard, and the work of the ashram in this direction was considerably simplified. The fact that it is mostly the real orthodox Hindus who have met the daily growing expenses of the ashram is perhaps a clear indication that untouchability is shaken to its foundation. There are indeed many other proofs of this, but the fact that good Hindus do not scruple to help an ashram where we go to the length of dining with the untouchables is no small proof. I am sorry that I should have to skip over quite a number of things pertaining to this subject, but we tackled delicate questions arising out of the main question, how we had to overcome some unexpected difficulties, and various other matters which are quite relevant to our description of experiments with truth. The chapters that follow will also suffer from the same drawback. I shall have to omit important details because most of the characters in the drama are still alive, and it is not proper without permission to use their names in connection with the events with which they are concerned. It is hardly practicable to obtain their consent or to get them every now and then to revise the chapters concerning themselves. Besides, such procedure is outside the limit of this autobiography. I therefore fear that the rest of the story, valuable as it is, in my opinion, to seekers after truth, will be told with inevitable omissions. Nevertheless, it is my desire and hope, God willing, to bring this narrative down to the days of non-cooperation. We shall for a moment take leave of the ashram, which in the very beginning had to weather internal and external storms, and briefly advert to a matter that engaged my attention. Indentured laborers were those who had emigrated from India to labor under an indenture for 5 years or less. Under the Smuts-Gandhi settlement of 1914, the 3-pound tax in respect of the indentured emigrants to Natal had been abolished, but the general emigration from India still needed treatment. In March 1916, Pandit Madan Mohan Malaviya ji moved a resolution in the Imperial Legislative Council for the abolition of the indenture system. In accepting the motion, Lord Hardinge announced that he had obtained from His Majesty's government the promise of the abolition in due course of the system. I felt, however, that India could not be satisfied with so very vague an assurance, but ought to agitate for immediate abolition. India had tolerated the system through her sheer negligence, and I believed the time had come when people could successfully agitate for this redress. I met some of the leaders, wrote in the press, and saw that public opinion was solidly in favor of immediate abolition. Might this be a fit subject for satyagraha? I had no doubt that it was, but I did not know the modus operandi. In the meantime, the Viceroy had made no secret of the meaning of the eventual abolition, which, as he said, were abolition within such reasonable time as will allow of alternative arrangements being introduced. So, in February 1917, Pandit Malaviya ji asked for leave to introduce a bill for the immediate abolition of the system. Lord Chelmsford refused permission. It was time for me to tour the country for an all-India agitation. Before I started the agitation, I thought it proper to wait upon the Viceroy. So I applied for an interview. He immediately granted it. Mr. Maffei, now Sir John Maffei, was his private secretary. I came in close contact with him. I had a satisfactory talk with Lord Chelmsford, who, without being definite, promised to be helpful. I began my tour from Bombay. Mr. Jahangir Petit undertook to convene the meeting under the auspices of Imperial Citizenship Association. The executive committee of the association met first for framing the resolutions to be moved at the meeting. Dr. Stanley Reid, Sergeant, now Sir, Lallubhai, Samaldas, Sergeant Natarajan and Mr. Petit were present at the committee meeting. The discussion centered round the fixing of the period within which the government was to be asked to abolish the system. There were 3 proposals, namely, for abolition as soon as possible, abolition by 31st July, and immediate abolition. I was for a definite date, as we could then decide what to do if the government failed to accede to our request within the time limit. Sergeant Lallubhai was for immediate abolition. He said immediate indicated a shorter period than the 31st July. I explained that the people would not understand the word immediate. If we wanted to get them to do something, they must have a more definite word. Everyone would interpret immediate in his own way. Government one way, the people another way. There was no question of misunderstanding the 31st of July, and if nothing was done by that date, we could proceed further. Dr. Reid saw the force of the argument, and ultimately Sergeant Lallubhai also agreed. We adopted the 31st July as the latest date by which the abolition should be announced. A resolution to that effect was passed at the public meeting, and meetings throughout India resolved accordingly. Mrs. Jaiji Petit put all her energies into the organization of a ladies' deputation to the Viceroy. Amongst the ladies from Bombay who formed the deputation, I remember the names of Lady Tata and late Dilshad Begum. The deputation had a great effect. The Viceroy gave an encouraging reply. I visited Karachi, Calcutta and various other places. There were fine meetings everywhere, and there was unbounded enthusiasm. I had not expected anything like it when the agitation was launched. In those days, I used to travel alone and had therefore wonderful experiences. The CID men were always after me. But as I had nothing to conceal, they did not molest me, nor did I cause them any trouble. Fortunately, I had not then received the stamp of Mahatmaship, though the shout of that name was quite common where people knew me. On one occasion, the detectives disturbed me at several stations, asked for my ticket and took down the number. I, of course, readily replied to all the questions they asked. My fellow passengers had taken me to be a sadhu or a fakir. When they saw that I was being molested at every station, they were exasperated and swore at the detectives. "Why are you worrying the poor sadhu for nothing?" they protested. "Don't you show these scoundrels your ticket?" they said, addressing me. I said to them gently, "It is no trouble to show them my ticket. They are doing their duty." The passengers were not satisfied. They evinced more and more sympathy and strongly objected to this sort of ill-treatment of innocent men. But the detectives were nothing. The real hardship was the third-class traveling. My bitterest experience was from Lahore to Delhi. I was going to Calcutta from Karachi via Lahore, where I had to change trains. It was impossible to find a place in the train. It was full, and those who could get in did so by sheer force, often sneaking through the windows if the doors were locked. I had to reach Calcutta on the date fixed for the meeting, and if I missed this train, I could not arrive in time. I had almost given up hope of getting in. No one was willing to accept me when a porter discovering my plight, came to me and said, "Give me 12 annas, and I will get you a seat." "Yes," said I, "you shall have 12 annas if you do procure me a seat." The young man went from carriage to carriage, entreating passengers, but no one heeded him. As the train was about to start, some passengers said, "There is no room here, but you can shove him in if you like. He will have to stand." "Well?" asked the young porter. I readily agreed, and he shoved me in bodily through the window. Thus I got in, and the porter earned his 12 annas. The night was a trial. The other passengers were sitting somehow. I stood 2 hours holding the chain of the upper bunk. Meanwhile, some of the passengers kept worrying me incessantly. "Why will you not sit down?" they asked. I tried to reason with them, saying there was no room, but they could not tolerate my standing, though they were lying full length on the upper bunks. They did not tire of worrying me, neither did I tire of gently replying to them. This at last mollified them. Some of them asked me my name, and when I gave it, they felt ashamed. They apologized and made room for me. Patience was thus rewarded. I was dead tired, and my head was reeling. God sent help just when it was most needed. In that way, I somehow reached Delhi and thence Calcutta. The Maharaja of Kasim Bazar, the president of the Calcutta meeting, was my host. Just as in Karachi, here also there was unbounded enthusiasm. The meeting was attended by several Englishmen. Before the 31st July, the government announced that indentured emigration from India was stopped. It was in 1894 that I drafted the first petition protesting against the system, and I had then hoped that this semi-slavery, as Sir W. W. Hunter used to call the system, would someday be brought to an end. There were many who aided in the agitation which was started in 1894, but I cannot help saying that potential satyagraha hastened the end. For further details of that agitation and of those who took part in it, I refer the reader to my Satyagraha in South Africa. Champaran is the land of King Janaka. Just as it abounds in mango groves, so used it to be full of indigo plantations until the year 1917. The Champaran tenant was bound by law to plant 3 out of every 20 parts of his land with indigo for his landlord. This system was known as the Teen Kathiya system, as 3 kathas out of 20, which make 1 acre, had to be planted with indigo. I must confess that I did not then know even the name, much less the geographical position of Champaran, and I had hardly any notion of indigo plantations. I had seen packets of indigo, but little dreamed that it was grown and manufactured in Champaran at great hardship to thousands of agriculturists. Rajkumar Shukla was one of the agriculturists who had been under this harrow, and he was filled with a passion to wash away the stain of indigo for the thousands who were suffering as he had suffered. This man caught hold of me at Lucknow, where I had gone for the Congress of 1916. "Vakil Babu will tell you everything about our distress," he said, and urged me to go to Champaran. Vakil Babu was none other than Babu Brajkishore Prasad, who became my esteemed co-worker in Champaran and who is the soul of public work in Bihar. Rajkumar Shukla brought him to my tent. He was dressed in a black alpaca achkan and trousers. Brajkishore Babu failed then to make an impression on me. I took it that he must be some vakil exploiting the simple agriculturists. Having heard from him something of Champaran, I replied as was my wont, "I can give no opinion without seeing the condition with my own eyes. You will please move the resolution in the Congress but leave me free for the present. Rajkumar Shukla, of course, wanted some help from the Congress. Babu Brajkishore Prasad moved the resolution expressing sympathy for the people of Champaran, and it was unanimously passed. Rajkumar Shukla was glad but far from satisfied. He wanted me personally to visit Champaran and witness the miseries of the riots there. I told him that I would include Champaran in the hour which I had contemplated and give it a day or two. One day will be enough, said he, and you will see things with your own eyes. From Lucknow I went to Kanpur. Rajkumar Shukla followed me there. Champaran is very near here. Please give a day, he insisted. Pray excuse me this time, but I promise that I will come, said I, further committing myself. I returned to the ashram. The ubiquitous Rajkumar was there too. Pray fix the day now, he said. Well, said I have to be in Calcutta on such and such a date. Come and meet me then and take me from there. I did not know where I was to go, what to do, what things to see. Before I reached Bhupen Babu's place in Calcutta, Rajkumar Shukla had gone and established himself there. Thus this ignorant, unsophisticated but resolute agriculturist captured me. So, early in 1917, we left Calcutta for Champaran, looking just like fellow rustics. I did not even know the train. He took me to it and we travelled together, reaching Patna in the morning. This was my first visit to Patna. I had no friend or acquaintance with whom I could think of putting up. I had an idea that Rajkumar Shukla, simple agriculturist as he was, must have some influence in Patna. I had come to know him a little more on the journey, and on reaching Patna, I had no illusions left concerning him. He was perfectly innocent of everything. The vakils that he had taken to be his friends were really nothing of the sort. Poor Rajkumar was more or less a menial to them. Between such agriculturist clients and their vakils, there is a gulf as wide as the Ganges in flood. Rajkumar Shukla took me to Rajendra Babu's place in Patna. Rajendra Babu had gone to Puri or some other place, I now forget which. There were 1 or 2 servants at the bungalow who paid us no attention. I had with me something to eat. I wanted dates which my companion procured for me from the bazaar. There was strict untouchability in Bihar. I might now draw water at the well whilst the servants were using it, lest drops of water from my bucket might pollute them, the servants not knowing to what caste I belonged. Rajkumar directed me to the indoor latrine. The servant promptly directed me to the outdoor one. All this was far from surprising or irritating to me, for I was inured to such things. The servants were doing the duty which they thought Rajendra Babu would wish them to do. These entertaining experiences enhanced my regard for Rajkumar Shukla if they also enabled me to know him better. I saw now that Rajkumar Shukla could not guide me and that I must take the reins in my own hands. I knew Maulana Mazharul Haq in London when he was studying for the bar, and when I met him at the Bombay Congress in 1915, the year in which he was the president of the Muslim League, he had renewed the acquaintance and extended me an invitation to stay with him whenever I happened to go to Patna. I bethought myself of this invitation and sent him a note indicating the purpose of my visit. He immediately came in his car and pressed me to accept his hospitality. I thanked him and requested him to guide me to my destination by the first available train, the railway guide being useless to an utter stranger like me. He had a talk with Rajkumar Shukla and suggested that I should first go to Muzaffarpur. There was a train for that place the same evening, and he sent me off by it. Principal Kriplani was then in Muzaffarpur. I had known of him ever since my visit to Hyderabad. Dr. Chaitaram had told me of his great sacrifice, of his simple life, and of the ashram that Dr. Chaitaram was running out of funds provided by Professor Kriplani. He used to be a professor in the government college, Muzaffarpur, and had just resigned the post when I went there. I had sent a telegram informing of my arrival, and he met me at the station with a crowd of students, though the train reached there at midnight. He had no rooms of his own and was staying with Professor Malkani, who therefore virtually became my host. It was an extraordinary thing in those days for a government professor to harbor a man like me. Professor Kriplani spoke to me about the desperate condition of Bihar, particularly of the Tirhut division, and gave me an idea of the difficulty of my task. He had established very close contact with the Biharis and had already spoken to them about the mission that took me to Bihar. In the morning, a small group of vakils called on me. I still remember Ramanavami Prasad among them, as his earnestness specially appealed to me. "It is not possible," he said, "for you to do the kind of work you have come for, if you stay here," meaning Professor Malkani's quarters. "You must come and stay with one of us. Gaya Babu is a well-known vakil here. I have come on his behalf to invite you to stay with him. I confess we are all afraid of government, but we shall render what help we can. Most of the things Rajkumar Shukla has told you are true. It is a pity our leaders are not here today. I have, however, wired to them both, Babu Brajkishore Prasad and Babu Rajendra Prasad. I expect them to arrive shortly, and they are sure to be able to give you all the information you want and to help you considerably. Pray come over to Gaya Babu's place." This was a request that I could not resist, though I hesitated for fear of embarrassing Gaya Babu. But he put me at ease, and so I went over to stay with him. He and his people showered all their affection on me. Brajkishore Babu now arrived from Darbhanga and Rajendra Babu from Puri. Brajkishore Babu was not the Babu Brajkishore Prasad I had met in Lucknow. He impressed me this time with his humility, simplicity, goodness, and extraordinary faith, so characteristic of the Biharis, and my heart was joyous over it. The Bihar vakil's regard for him was an agreeable surprise to me. Soon I felt myself becoming bound to this circle of friends in lifelong friendship. Brajkishore Babu acquainted me with the facts of the case. He used to be in the habit of taking up the cases of the poor tenants. There were 2 such cases pending when I went there. When he won any such case, he consoled himself that he was doing something for these poor people. Not that he did not charge fees from these simple peasants. Lawyers labor under the belief that if they do not charge fees, they will have no wherewithal to run their households and will not be able to render effective help to the poor people. The figures of the fees they charged and the standard of a barrister's fees in Bengal and Bihar staggered me. "We gave rupees 10,000 to so-and-so for his opinion," I was told. Nothing less than 4 figures in any case. The friends listened to my kindly reproach and did not misunderstand me. "Having studied these cases," said I have come to the conclusion that we should stop going to law courts. Taking such cases to the courts does little good. Where the rights are so crushed and fear-stricken, law courts are useless. The real relief for them is to be free from fear. We cannot sit still until we have driven Teen Kathiya out of Bihar. I had thought that I should be able to leave here in 2 days, but I now realize that the work might take even 2 years. I am prepared to give that time if necessary. I am now feeling my ground, but I want your help. I found Brajkishore Babu exceptionally cool-headed. We shall render all the help we can, he said quietly, but pray tell us what kind of help you will need. And thus we sat talking until midnight. I shall have little use for your legal knowledge, I said to them. I want clerical assistance and help in interpretation. It may be necessary to face imprisonment, but much as I would love you to run that risk, you would go only so far as you feel yourselves capable of going. Even turning yourselves into clerks and giving up your profession for an indefinite period is no small thing. I find it difficult to understand the local dialect of Hindi, and I shall not be able to read papers written in Kaithi or Urdu. I shall want you to translate them for me. We cannot afford to pay for this work. It should all be done for love and out of a spirit of service. Brajkishore Babu understood this immediately, and he now cross-examined me and his companions by turns. He tried to ascertain the implications of all that I had said, how long their service would be required, how many of them would be needed, whether they might serve by turns, and so on. Then he asked the vakils the capacity of their sacrifice. Ultimately they gave me the assurance, such and such a number of us will do whatever you may ask. Some of us will be with you for so much time as you may require. The idea of accommodating oneself to imprisonment is a novel thing for us. We will try to assimilate it. My object was to inquire into the condition of the Champaran agriculturists and understand their grievances against the indigo planters. For this purpose, it was necessary that I should meet thousands of riots. But I deemed it essential before starting on my enquiry to know the planters' side of the case and see the commissioner of the division. I sought and was granted appointments with both. The secretary of the Planters' Association told me plainly that I was an outsider and that I had no business to come between the planters and their tenants, but if I had any representation to make, I submit it in writing. I politely told him that I did not regard myself as an outsider and that I had every right to inquire into the condition of the tenants if they desired me to do so. The commissioner on whom I called proceeded to bully me and advised me forthwith to leave Tirhut. I acquainted my co-workers with all this and told them that there was a likelihood of government stopping me from proceeding further, and that if I was to be arrested, it would be best that the arrest should take place in Motihari or, if possible, in Bettiah. It was advisable, therefore, that I should go to those places as early as possible. Champaran is a district of the Tirhut division and Motihari is its headquarters. Rajkumar Shukla's place was in the vicinity of Bettiah, and the tenants belonging to the Kothis in its neighborhood were the poorest in the district. Rajkumar Shukla wanted me to see them, and I was equally anxious to do so. So I started with my co-workers for Motihari the same day. Babu Gorakh Prasad harbored us in his home, which became a caravanserai. It could hardly contain us all. The very same day we heard that about 5 miles from Motihari a tenant had been ill-treated. It was decided that, in company with Babu Dharanindra Prasad, I should go and see him the next morning, and we accordingly set off for the place on elephant's back. An elephant, by the way, is about as common in Champaran as a bullock cart in Gujarat. We had scarcely gone halfway when a messenger from the police superintendent overtook us and said that the latter had sent his compliments. I saw what he meant. Having left Dharaninder Babu to proceed to the original destination, I got into the hired carriage which the messenger had brought. He then served on me a notice to leave Champaran and drove me to my place. On his asking me to acknowledge the service of the notice, I wrote to the effect that I did not propose to comply with it and leave Champaran till my inquiry was finished. Thereupon I received a summons to take my trial the next day for disobeying the order to leave Champaran. I kept awake that whole night, writing letters and giving necessary instructions to Babu Braj Kishore Prasad. The news of the notice and the summons spread like wildfire, and I was told that Motihari that day witnessed unprecedented scenes. Gorakh Babu's house and the courthouse overflowed with men. Fortunately, I had finished all my work during the night and so was able to cope with the crowds. My companions proved the greatest help. They occupied themselves with regulating the crowds, for the latter followed me wherever I went. A sort of friendliness sprang up between the officials, collector, magistrate, police superintendent, and myself. I might have legally resisted the notices served on me. Instead, I accepted them all, and my conduct towards the officials was correct. They thus saw that I did not want to offend them personally, but that I wanted to offer civil resistance to their orders. In this way, they were put at ease, and instead of harassing me, they gladly availed themselves of my and my co-workers' cooperation in regulating the crowds. But it was an ocular demonstration to them of the fact that their authority was shaken. The people had, for the moment, lost all fear of punishment and yielded obedience to the power of love which their new friend exercised. It should be remembered that no one knew me in Champaran. The peasants were all ignorant. Champaran, being far up north of the Ganges and right at the foot of the Himalayas in close proximity to Nepal, was cut off from the rest of India. The Congress was practically unknown in those parts. Even those who had heard the name of the Congress shrank from joining it or even mentioning it. And now the Congress and its members had entered this land, though not in the name of the Congress, yet in a far more real sense. In consultation with my co-workers, I had decided that nothing should be done in the name of the Congress. What we wanted was work and not name, substance and not shadow. For the name of the Congress was the biti noire of the government and their controllers, the planters. To them, the Congress was a byword for lawyers' wrangles, evasion of law through legal loopholes, a byword for bomb and anarchical crime, and for diplomacy and hypocrisy. We had to disillusion them both. Therefore, we had decided not to mention the name of the Congress and not to acquaint the peasants with the organization called the Congress. It was enough, we thought, if they understood and followed the spirit of the Congress instead of its letter. No emissaries had therefore been sent there, openly or secretly, on behalf of the Congress to prepare the ground for our arrival. Rajkumar Shukla was incapable of reaching the thousands of peasants. No political work had yet been done amongst them. The world outside Champaran was not known to them, and yet they received me as though we had been age-long friends. It is no exaggeration, but the literal truth, to say that in this meeting with the peasants I was face to face with God, Ahimsa and truth. When I come to examine my title to this realization, I find nothing but my love for the people. And this in turn is nothing but an expression of my unshakable faith in Ahimsa. That day in Champaran was an unforgettable event in my life and a red-letter day for the peasants and for me. According to the law, I was to be on my trial, but truly speaking, government was to be on its trial. The commissioner only succeeded in trapping government in the net which he had spread for me.